Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for tuning in with our talk with Daniel. I wanted to introduce our great friend, Brian Emmanuel Gray. And I also wanted to explain the little change we had in the program. And that was that Daniel called earlier, and he was just back from a trip to Mexico. And he was just really still inspired by his trip to Prague. And rather than talk about his near-death experience, he said, I really just want to share this moment of patriotism and spiritual freedom. And he said, if I could just do this talk a little bit later with Brian, that would be my first choice because I feel called upon by the masters to get this message out. So we had about a 25-minute talk with Daniel, and I hope that if you weren't here live for it, you'll be able to hear it as a recording. It was really inspirational, very unifying. And so now we have our great friend Brian. And we really are interested to hear what Brian has to say because he's one of the few people on the earth that has actually passed beyond the veil and brought back conscious memory of what it's like, and we're interested in hearing spiritual solutions that came to him. And along with the other people that have recorded near-death experiences, I think what happens, from what I've learned, is that you get a very holistic view of life. And people can come back with a vibration of the heavenly world that they can share with us. So we're really interested in hearing what he has to say today, and we're really grateful you could all be with us here and on the broadcast. And I'm going to let Michael say a few words as well.
Yeah, just a couple. And I just wanted to say this about Brian and my experience with Brian is that people who have these near-death experiences are often gifted with a spiritual sight. Some people who have this sight are not at the same time real chillas as the Brotherhood. And I just want to bear witness to Brian's chillship and never-ending work, really, to bring the Brotherhood's teachings forward. And for that, we're all very, very grateful. So, without further ado, oh, Sheila and brother mine, thank you.
Well, thank you, Paula. Thank you, Michael. It's one of these things where following Daniel, somebody who's had a series of near-death experiences and NDEs and a series of OBEs, which is out-of-body experiences. Following somebody like him, it's one of these things where the big dog's already barked, and so I'm a bit of a chihuahua, and so but that's okay because it's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. That's what Grandpa says. And so, what happens is that these are these things where essentially death is always seen as a bit of a mystery, and people are always, one way or the other, interested in this stuff. And when I was coming home from Canada, I was just up in Canada visiting with my family. And this town, so I'm from this really tiny, tiny place up in the flat plains and up in Saskatchewan. And so because there's so few people in every town, they basically bus all the towns to a central town, and then you go to high school in this one town. And so there's this town, 1, 2, 3, 4 towns away from ours, and yet I went to school with all these people in this little town. And I'm on my way back to the United States, and so I'm driving past this town where I'd partied and went to many dances in many times, and I'm driving by, or I'm coming up to it just around the curve, and somebody had pulled out and was hit by a half-ton truck, right, just before I got there. And so the police had just arrived, and one of the locals had brought out a blue tarp and covered the vehicles because it was a wipeout. And as I was driving by, and of course we were told and trained that when you see something of this sort of magnitude, you say, "In the name of my mighty iron presence and holy Christ self, I call to you, beloved Jesus, beloved Archangel Michael, beloved Mother Mary, to come forth and to take command and control of every facet and aspect of this situation." And it was such an interesting thing because I was making the call, and the call I give is see to it that no blood spilt will be used for any negative energies whatsoever, that this place be sealed from astral forces that would move in on that stuff. And it sounds creepy, but anyway, so let it be. And but as I was making the call, right, it was this thing where the thought came up, what if it was, because people in these little towns, they either move away or they stay there. And so what if it was somebody I went to high school with? What if it was this girl I dated? And I was like, And so just for a moment I had this hesitation, and then I was like, oh, that's my carnal mind. Because even if somebody has, and we know that my mom told me, she followed me up or down to Montana, and she said that both people in that car were killed, right? And I was like, I've already been dead. I know what happens, and of all the time, there's somebody who knows about the masters, who knows about the calls, who knows about death, that these people had me drive by right at that moment. And there they are, knocked out of their bodies, and they're right there, and they're standing there just in shock, right? And so with a quick read, I was like, oh no, this isn't anyone that I know from the point of view of my own human personal experience, of my life. And so I just made the calls, and depending on exactly how the karma goes, the angels come and they're taken to a place of light rather than just simply in this netherworld of confusion. And so a lot of the work that we do out of the body at night, which is out of body experience, is to help people who have left their body, but they don't exactly know what to do because they're too young as souls to know exactly what to do. And so we're going to be talking about all sorts of stuff like this, where near-death experience, and which is NDEs, and OBEs, out-of-body experiences, are not Disneyland. I mean, they have a glitz and a sort of, aura of mystery about them. But in the end, what happens is that it's just an awakening, and that awakening allows an expansion of work that you're doing all the time. And literally, there's a certain amount of responsibility that goes along with the thing. And so when I was told that we were going to be doing this thing, and I really liked the format where Paula was going to interview Daniel and I, and so I wouldn't have to come up with what I was going to say. I would just answer what was asked, right? And it's an interesting thing that, so when I was 2.5 months old, I basically had what was called in those days crib death. They now call it SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome. And so what happens is that the story goes, it was my mom's first, going to go out after, baby being born and looking after. And so my grandmother comes with her friend, and they're sitting there while baby's sleeping, and they're playing cards, crib. I don't know if you know what crib is, but cribbage. And the story goes that I got from my grandmother was she was playing cards, and all of a sudden she went, "Oh my God, the baby," right? Just without even knowing what it was that she was actually doing. And she gets up and goes into the bedroom, takes me out of the crib, and so she said that I was purple and blue, and she said she picked me up and she shook me, shouting my name, Brian, Brian. And so the baby specialist said that her thumbs happened to have gotten right in the right place in the middle of my chest and basically pumped me up. And she said that, and she had my grandmother had 9 children, one of them didn't survive, but so she had 8 children, or 9 births. And so she knew what, and she said it was just like a baby being born, right? Where that first breath goes in and that purple and blue just goes pink, that the pink just went from the center out. And I started to cry and was back, right? And so, of course, they took me to the hospital, and the baby specialist said, sorry, but most likely you're going to have rubber baby, right? Because the baby has been without oxygen far too long, and there was various ideas of estimates and stuff, but it was a long time. And so what happens is that they expected, that I would be a brain-injured child as a result of the oxygen deprivation. But what happened was so I basically started to walk when I was 9 months old, but I was saying my first words at 8 months old, right? Horse was my first word. Horse, right? My second word was bugum, which is bubble gum. And so, I had my priorities already right there. But when I started to, and so this was a great relief to the people that I was, my motor activity was, I was crawling, and I actually didn't crawl. They said I went from basically sliding to walking, and it's because of the damage to the corpus callosum that I lacked the cross crawl pattern. And I used to get killed when we were kids playing war, because I couldn't get down and crawl like the rest of these guys and go, pow, pow, I got you. So I'd always get hit. But anyways, and so what happens is that as soon as I could start to string words together, and I was stringing them together pretty good by the time I was 3 years old, right? And I remember just vaguely talking about the situation of the pink blanket, right, with the family when I was about 3. But by the time I was 4, I was telling them, look, when I was dead, this lady came and she took me and put me in a pink blanket and took me to this place where I was shown all these things, taught all these things. And even though it was within a very short time, right, which, maximum of 15 minutes, to my experience, it was almost like a month of compressed experience, right? And what I was taught and what I was shown, and the way I was taught it and the way I was shown it, I have been reticent to speak about, and so when I had this pressure, sort of, okay, Daniel and you are going to talk about near-death experience, right? And you're going to have question and answer. All these years that I have, mentioned to people I've had near-death experience, and that the archetypes and all of that stuff was given to me at that really early formative age, I've never actually ever told the story. And so it's kind of a funny thing where I was never given to tell the story, because it was, the byword is to know, to dare, to do, and to be silent, right? And when somebody has something sort of unusual happen to them and they express it, there's a tendency, and because the expression of the thing will stimulate memories within the auric field of other people of their passing previously, they get very interested and curious of the individual who's going to say something like that. Now, the dweller will react as well, which is, get away from that crazy guy. But if the dweller can't get you to go away from that guy who's going to talk about these things that have happened to us all thousands of times. We've all lived thousands of times before, and we've all died thousands of times before. It's not big, strange stuff. But when somebody actually has it and comes back and can have a cognitive record and understanding and memory of it, it stimulates an antipathy or a sympathy within the person's system. Okay, so antipathy is where the dweller says, stay away from the nut job, right? Sympathy is where the dweller can't get them to get away from you, so the dweller gets them to idolatrize the person who's had that experience. And that is, both of them are wrong, right? Because somebody who's had near-death experience is just the same as everybody, because we've all had near-death experience, right? The key is, what was that near-death experience for?